Hello, this is Mandi Ellefson, host of the Hands Off CEO podcast. Today on the show, I have Chris Mercer. Mercer, he goes by his last name. And he's an accomplished entrepreneur, measurement strategist, and co-founder of Measurement Holdings Group, which is a parent company of MeasureU, Profit School, and Measure Summit. I'm having Mercer on here. Mercer and I are in a mastermind together. Brilliant guy. And I've had a chance to learn a lot of really incredible things from him around how they do measurement and tracking of results and campaigns, and also utilizing AI, and just a really innovative guy. So I wanted to have him on the show to dig into these different topics because he's really passionate about operations and really taking a strategic approach to productivity management, and definitely ahead of the curve when it comes to utilizing different technologies, including AI, to be able to get a lot of work done in a short amount of time. Ultimately, the reason why I wanted him to have Mercer come on this podcast is that Mercer has figured out how to be able to track the results that you deliver for your clients in a way that I think is really useful. And one of the things that we see a lot of times is that service-based companies really struggle knowing the real impact that their work makes. And as a result, they're undercharging and they're not making as much money as they could. And it also impacts their sales. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted Mercer on. But then he delivered this really incredible training around artificial intelligence. I'm like, we got to get into this too. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Mercer. So glad to have you.
Thanks, Mandy. Appreciate being here and happy to chat about measurement, AI, and everything in between.
Sounds great. Given what we're talking about here, what do you see some of the biggest challenges that are coming up with professional services and showing their value when it comes to tracking?
It's a really good point, and I think to kind of help bring maybe a specific example could be helpful here. So let's say you're an agency and your job is to generate leads, generate traffic. You're on that side of the coin, and then you've got your client who's handling all the web pages and the website and all the funnels and everything else. What I have seen, right, with our students that are agencies and agency owners, they tend to come to us in the beginning because they have this problem, which is I'm sending traffic, it's not converting. I am trying to tell the client what's going on, but honestly can't see their side of things or what's happening. We're not able to effectively tell them the story that says, don't you think all that Facebook traffic we're sending you ends up as an email later? And how does your email list magically grow, even though we're not directly attributing that, but we know that we have an impact. And if you stop your Facebook spend, you're going to see your email go down. But the clients are like, yeah, whatever. Let me just go to the next new agency who says that they can tell me better, right? And that they're going to tell me how the dollars are actually making sense for me to spend with the agency. And you have this cycle where like every 90 days, it feels like the client's leaving for the next new promise of an agency. And this is the problem that agencies have. They cannot retain clients. And I think it just comes down to what you were talking about. They can't effectively explain the story of how they're helping impact their clients' revenue and profit, right? So the way that we think about measurement, and this is what I would suggest that those agencies that have that challenge, if you have this challenge, think about it in this way, is we have to learn how to have a measurement strategy in our organization. And that is missing from almost most organizations because it just hasn't reached out to the market quite yet. It's starting to, for sure, but they think because they have measurement tools that they have a measurement strategy. So the agency thinks because they have Google Analytics, they've got a measurement strategy. They don't, they just have a measurement tool. But they also might have Hyros or Triple Whale or whatever the insert tools here. There's a billion of them, Wicked Reports, right? The list goes on, there's thousands of them. All of those tools were made for the tool company's strategy, not for you, right? So you have all these different tools that are out there with all these different strategies they were made for. Then the agency tries to use them. They're all combined in different ways. They're doing their best, but they're not unified. So they can't communicate a very simple story. And so where it comes down to is how do you take a bunch of tools that are all sort of working with each other, and sometimes you get answers from Google Analytics, but they don't make sense when you pull the other side of what Facebook Ads Manager is saying, and that's totally different than what Hyros says, and Wicked Reports is somewhere in the middle, and everyone's like, I don't know what's going on, and this is the problem. So instead of that, you start higher and you go, what is the measurement strategy that actually shows us which tools we're supposed to use and how we are supposed to use those tools? So you still use the same tools, but it's how you organize those tools. And that's what a measurement strategy does. And this is the piece that's missing. So I'll give you the 3 steps to that. It is very simple.
Before we dig into this, this is really an important thing, and I want to open this up for other service-based companies that may not be agents generating traffic, but this applies to all B2B services, because essentially when you have a business service, you are being hired to help them generate top line revenue or bottom line profit. That's essentially why they're hiring you. Even the peace of mind stuff, it's still all trickles back down to this. So the closer you can get to that number, the more clients are willing to pay, and also the more motivated they are to hire you. So, so I really want to emphasize that everyone listening to this that's selling B2B services, this applies. The same exact strategy applies, even if you happen to use a different tool set than Mercer is talking about. So thanks, Mercer. Please share break down the 3 steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there are specific other examples that you want to bring up, use cases, happy to go down that as well to help make it a little more.
Well, this is a great example.
User friendly. Perfect. So we'll start with the way it starts. There's really 3 steps to this. And the reason that this strategy exists is because, and I'm a systems guy, so I always think in terms of a system. In other words, a series of activities that are not complicated, that I don't really have to think about. They don't take effort for me. I just need to go through these in this order. Think about it like a recipe, right? You just assemble the ingredients in this way, at this time, in these amounts. And when you do this, you magically have a cake, right? Same sort of concept that we're doing with this measurement strategy. Now, the goal is that most marketers, most clients, most agency owners, whatever the business is that you're in, we tend to be marketing in the blind or taking actions in the blind. We don't know what's working, what's not, what we need to do to improve. We don't know how things are impacting. What we're trying to do is naturally get to that spot where, to your point, we have improved revenue and results, or revenue and profits, right? That's what most people want. But you can't control that. All you can do, that's the market's job, right? Our customers control that. What we can do is influence everything that leads the market to be able to do that, right? To be able to improve revenue and profits. So what we do as a strategy is to move it from we're kind of wandering around, bouncing on the walls, trying to figure out what's working and what's not, all the way to, hey, we know what's going on and we know how this impacts revenue and profits. The way we do that is 3 steps. First, we plan things out, then we build things out, and you're going to launch it. You're actually going to use it in a specific way. So we'll talk about those 3 steps, but it is simple. It is simple on purpose, because simple is a skill. Complexity is not hard. It's easy to be complex. And I think that's the challenge with most companies is they think complex sells and it just razzle dazzles. It's jazz hands, right? I would much rather prefer a very simple, easy to follow system that just gets results because it is so simple.
You said something really important before you move on to this. I really want to emphasize what you said, because you were talking about the market's going to do what the market is going to do. But we need to, if I'm hearing this correctly, and let me know if you need to clarify this for me. But there are certain inputs that we can impact the market at different steps within our service.
Yes, and they have control. We have influence.
Yes,
that's how to think about that.
And so what I heard from you is that our responsibility is to influence that, but we have to actually know what is influencing to be able to impact it.
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. And that's why it starts with that first step, which is planning it out. In other words, what is our plan? How are we going to influence it? And what are we going to do? So really 3 simple steps, or 3 keys, I should say, to that planning step, right? First is we have to list out all the questions we're trying to answer. So I typically think about these in terms of results and how questions. A lot of companies are asking results questions, which is things like, how many sales did we make? What's our average order value, right? What's the LTV of a customer? How many leads did we acquire? All that stuff is sort of the result of a journey. So if that user journey works, what's the result of the journey? Awesome. Got to have those. And I think people generally ask those. But if you're not, you should definitely start with that. The thing that's missing are the how questions. And that's what people don't think about. How is this supposed to occur? And how would I know if it's occurring that way? So if we go to okay, I need to know how many sales I'm making. Okay, well, or my core conversion rate for whatever the offer is. Great. That's a result style question that we need to get the answer to. But more importantly, that's still important. More important is the how questions. How did that happen? How many people do I get to go to that offer page? How many people actually went through the checkout process? How many percentage of those actually finished it? For what average amount, right? So now we start to see all the different components that led to that result. So we're not just asking questions about the end result, but we're asking questions around how that result should happen. And we just and I think about this like 3 columns. So I'll have a column of all my questions that I'm asking, the results and how questions, and make sure you have both types. Most of them will be how questions. Then next to the question that you've listed, so this is the second column now. This is where I'm listing out the information that I'm going to need to collect in order to answer the question. So if I'm trying to say, well, what's my core conversion rate? I'm going to have to know the number of people who started that user journey, right? With that initial first step, how many actually completed the user journey by buying, and I can divide it out and figure out my conversion rate. If it's leads or opt-in rate, same concept. People that saw the opt-in, people that fulfilled on the opt-in, I can now figure out my conversion rate. So I'm starting to list out the different things, the different items I need to collect. And that's already starting me to go, okay, well, I can measure that. I'll grab that from Google Analytics, or I'll grab that from the client spreadsheet where they tell me this, or whatever the thing is that I'm getting that information. So first column is the results and how questions. The second column are what's the behaviors that we need to collect in order to answer those questions, right? The behaviors that the market's giving us. Then that third key to this, and we're still in the planning. You haven't opened up these tools. You haven't looked at them. You're not trying to use anything right now. You're just planning out how things are supposed to work. That third key is missed 99.9% of the time in any sort of measurement plan. And that is action. What action are we going to take if the number comes in exactly as expected, the number comes in lower than expected, or the number comes in higher than expected? And you must think about those three directions. That's truly action planning. So what's happened now is, and you think about reports where sometimes a client will get a report from a well-meaning agency, and the client's like, I have no idea what this means. I don't know what to do. Like, what is this telling me? And you hear these questions like that. It's because there was no plan of action for the report. The report was just a data dump. And so the client sees it, and they go, well, I don't know what to do with this, because they hadn't pre-planned actions to do anything with it. So of course they're just like, what do I do with this is the first question. But that's already lost the battle. The report should never have been created because it was created for no purpose. So, but instead, if you say, okay, here's the questions we're trying to answer, here's the information we're going to collect to get the answers, here's what the client should be doing, or what we should be doing if it's a report for us. If the answer comes in lower, higher, or just right. So we'll use the opt-in rate example. So let's say the opt-in rate is a question we're trying to answer. The information I'm going to need to collect is the people who see the opt-in, people who finish the opt-in, right? Fulfilling the opt-in. So now I can figure out my conversion rate. I expect my conversion rate, let's say it's for cold traffic, I expect it to be between 25 and 35% opt-in rate is what I should get. If I get that opt-in rate, I will continue to scale that traffic on paid ads for Facebook, right? Or whatever the thing is I'm doing. If it's lower than 25%, I'm going to look on the ad side and see, is my click-through rate really, really high? Because if the click-through rate's good, that implies that whatever that ad is talking about, they are kind of into because they're clicking over, but maybe there's a disconnect on the landing page now that's not matching the expectations set by the ad. So I'm going to look and see if that's happening. If it is, I'm going to look at the landing page and be like, how do we better match what the ads are saying? Because they're clearly interested in those ads or they wouldn't be clicking on them. Now, if the click-through rate is really not there at all, we know it's on the ad side. It's the hook or the angles we need to rework. So it's not anything on the landing page. We can't even get them to leave Facebook yet. So we got to work there. And then that's just if it's lower, but you can start to see already the actions that I've got planned. And then the higher, what if it comes in at 75% opt-in rate? That says to me that traffic is probably not the right traffic source because it's hot. That's coming in like they are the exact right people at the exact right time, which says to me you're probably missing out on leads because you're so tightly targeted. And if you expand out the target of that audience, yes, your conversion rate is going to go down, but because you're able to reach more people, you'll net more leads. So that would be the action I would take if the opt-in rate came in really, really hot, like too high. So now I'm just planning the measurement. I know my results and how questions around the opt-in rate. I know what I'm going to collect to measure that opt-in rate. And I know what I'm going to do when I see the opt-in rate in my report. So there's no more, what do I do with this? I automatically know what I'm going to do with that just on the measurement plan. So super important to plan that out first.
So what I'm hearing is that you're identifying all the variables to success or failure. And you're actually saying, right, this is what success looks like. This is what below success looks like. And here's how we fix that. So a lot of times, I guess let me ask you this. What percentage of, let's say the kind of companies you're working with, agencies in this example, what percentage of them do you think have this kind of strategy in place?
None. Less than 1%. Easy. Less than 1%.
So the ones that do have this strategy in place or something that's like that, some kind of intentionality around it, how much better results do they get for their clients?
Exponential, because they knew the plan and they know if the plan's working or not because they have a plan, a detailed plan that includes what actions they're going to take if things don't work. So they can iterate faster. They don't have to spend time thinking, what do we do? How do we say what, how do we solve this? They automatically know what to do because they've pre-planned his actions. That's why that's so important.
Right. So then
it's a huge unlock.
And if they're delivering that much bigger results, how have you seen that impact their companies?
And we haven't covered the rest of the framework, which is what would satisfy this result. But let's say I'm a traffic agency and you're a traffic agency. My traffic agency is the traditional one, where I just do what I learned to do by buying the courses everybody else learned to buy 10 years ago, whatever it was. And I run an agency and I do what every other agency on the planet does, which is I sent you 10,000 reaching impressions. Here's your click-through rate, blah, blah, blah. Good luck. Figure out how to make it convert, because I can't see their side. Versus you're an agency that has measurement set up. You handle that for your clients. You understand that you need to measure on the side. You understand how you're going to work the ads and the plan. You're able to communicate that on the client's discovery call. That separates you out as an agency. So already you're able to improve your own revenue and profits, because you're more likely to take that client from me, because all I can do is do what every other agency did. So I'm just the generic agency to them.
You're just,
right?
I might be the 14th
crank version. Yeah, I'm just the next guy on the list that they've gone through every 3 months on. Then they see you and you're like, hey, here's how we operate. And already, if you just say, here's how we plan things out, here's what we do, we think about these sort of actions before we even start hitting go on we don't even hit ad spend until this is thought through. And you're like, that's cool. So now if the ad spend doesn't come in and doesn't perform as expected, we're going to know where and why and what actions to take. And we're going to work with you, client, on your side. If you're open to it, we'll help you measure on your side, so that if it is on the landing page side, we know exactly what's going on and we can offer you some advice as to how you might be able to optimize that traffic better and get the market to, do those behaviors, because you can see it. You can explain the story. You have visibility and you can communicate that visibility to them. Whereas at the old agency, I can't communicate the visibility. And that's where they go, well, I can't help them, but you would be able to.
Right. Well, and then when you're looking at this, when you're creating exponentially higher results, now you're that in-demand company. You're the in-demand service provider that other people are making referrals to, that your clients just can't possibly do without. I mean, how much higher fees are you seeing these kind of companies charge?
I mean, we charge just for measurement services, $7,500 a month right now, just measurement. We don't run traffic. That's just measuring stuff. So just that skill, if you just were incredible at measuring for behavioral measurement on the sites and everything else, that's a pretty good premium. Like we've been certifying people for years to do this for agencies for exactly this reason, because I didn't want to do all the work. Like, I know I could have built this agency that does all the work, but I really enjoy educating and training. And that's sort of my mission in life, is turning on other people's light bulbs going, man, I never thought about it like that. That's my impact. I love that. So I didn't want to build the agency, but I did want people who knew how to do it. So I created a certification program where agencies can come through, learn these skills, and then I help them build their businesses and do all that fun stuff with it. But it is a very in-demand setting. Now, that said, that's just exclusively if you were doing measurement. If you're already a traffic agency, imagine having measurement skills now, a measurement strategy. Now you're that agency that can explain, yes, I understand that Facebook spend did not produce 10x ROAS in the first 3 days of the campaign. Here's what it did produce. It produced 300 leads to email. We know, based on our numbers of how we measure your company, that you will close 10% of those emails within 45 days with your current autoresponder series for an average ticket of $100. So this spend here, 30 days later, should turn into this. And we're measuring that to make sure it does, by the way, to make sure your emails are all doing what they, and all of a sudden the client's like, oh, like there's that sigh of relief, like, wow, somebody's actually, they kind of know what's going on. And the client doesn't feel like they have a black box of marketing. Where money goes in, money comes out. Sometimes it's more money than goes in. Sometimes it's not any money comes out. And that's a horrible place to be. That's measurement helps light up the black box. It makes it clear so you can see what's going in. You can lift the hood, you can tweak stuff.
One of the things that we have seen is that, well, first of all, they're like, I don't know these numbers. They don't tell us. That's one of the things. And I think sometimes that's a cop out. What do you think?
When you say that, you mean the agency's not knowing the numbers?
Yeah, the agency's like, I don't really know the numbers. But sometimes they really just won't give them the numbers, right? And sometimes you're like, well, they don't really give us those numbers.
Why would a client, but this goes back to, I would say this is user error on the agency's part, because the agency should be able to control this. They just didn't sell the client properly. They didn't set the client's expectations. Because if the client, let's say I'm the client, you're my agency now, right? And I'm that person. I go, hey, I'm getting rid of this other guy. I'm going to use you now because you seem to have your stuff together and you're talking about it in a completely unique way, which separates you out from the market, which is why I'm working with you, to your point. So then you come back to me and you're like, okay, I need this, this, this. Am I likely to say no? No, I'm going to be like, okay, that makes sense because I understand why you need it, because you described your process, right? You have a plan. Here's why I need this stuff, not tell me your numbers. Like, because that's just, what are you going to do with it? But if it's like, oh, here's why you have cinnamon. I need cinnamon in this recipe. I'm going to need to know the cinnamon that you have. That makes total sense. Now we're collaborative partners. And that's exactly where you want to be with B2B. Because
So
if your
then,
customer or client is your partner, or they consider you a partner, you're there forever. I've had clients for
so
10 years because of this, you know?
so then what you're saying is the reason why they're not giving the numbers is because you're not giving them a purpose for what you're going to be using them for, and you haven't
Yes.
built that into your narrative and your value proposition. And when you do, then clients will very happily give you those numbers.
If they understand how the answers, whatever it is, answers, right? Numbers, will you willing to buy this now? Anything you're asking. If they're not giving you an answer, it's because they don't know how that answer would possibly be useful to them. So you have to make
Right.
sure they understand how it's useful to them and why it's useful. The only way to get to that usefulness is that you're the one who needs to know the answer so you can make it useful. So you provide something useful for them.
That's a really
Yep.
great distinction there, because what you're actually saying is this has to be happening in the sales process. And
Yes.
this is how you're setting up your whole, not even just like, these are our success conditions, we have to have these things, but it's actually part of your whole narrative, your whole sales pitch, basically.
Because you're always selling, right? Even
Right.
6 months into a client relationship, you're still selling the client for retention
100%.
purposes and always reinforcing over and over. That's exactly right. And
Well,
and they
I
get
will,
really used to that system, which is kind of nice.
well, I'll tell you what, from our clients, because as you know, we take our clients through this irresistible offer process, and we help them be able to really demonstrate much bigger results for their clients. And when they're able to look at what these variables are that they need to control, they actually start measuring progress and actually be looking at how do we be able to lead to the results, as opposed to just, we do our process, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but you know what, fingers crossed, I hope it works.
Yeah.
That's what the rest of the market is doing.
Right.
And
That's
clients are
exactly
getting pretty
right.
tired of it. B2B clients
Right.
are really tired of it.
Yep.
In a market that's a little tighter, they're just simply not willing to pay that anymore. They're not.
Right.
They'll pay for teeny tiny little projects. They'll throw spaghetti against the wall to see if it'll work, but there's a lot less spaghetti to throw against the wall when times are tight.
Yes.
They want certainty.
That's exactly right. And money's more expensive, right? Back when money was 0% interest rates, it was easy, it was cheap. You could risk capital and everybody did because they didn't really care. Now it's becoming more expensive, right? Anybody that took out loans back in those days, those loans are coming due and you got to pay that stuff. So you need to make sure you're efficient. And that's why this big turn toward efficiency and like, how do things actually work? Because if you cannot make things more efficient unless you understand how the machinery works. And that's why everyone's desperately going like, I need to know how the machine works now. Didn't care for the last 5 years because it didn't matter. I was just throwing reach and impressions traffic. But now I really need to know what's going on. So how
Right.
this process works so I can adjust it and see, is it working according to plan? That's exactly
Well,
right.
and that comes to, and you're looking at the efficiency of the system here, but when you're looking at a bigger picture perspective for the client, or I mean, when you're looking at the client and saying, how do we create the biggest transformations for the client? Well, you have to understand the factors of transformation. You have to know what
Yes.
variables will impact the results. And if you don't know
Yes.
that, you really don't know what you're doing.
Right.
And
That's exactly right.
I know that's kind of a bold thing to say, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone, but the thing is, you probably do know what you're doing. And what happens, I've seen that, and you tell me if you see this too, Mercer, is that you have the CEO who gets very involved in the day to day because they're the one who, they know how to make those decisions about the data instinctively. They look at it, they can say, this is what we need to do. They can make those decisions, but there's no frameworks for making decisions. So they can't let go. So it's either
the system's
they're
stuck
in
in their
there.
head.
Yeah. They're in there driving the results, or the results don't happen nearly as well if they step back.
Right. And our whole mission is pulling those systems out. So, and this is why the measurement system is the simplest possible way, because then everybody in the company understands it. So if everybody understands how measurement works, they're more likely to add UTMs to those emails because they understand those little parameters are going to identify the email, right? They're more likely to note the things down in the spreadsheet if somebody's using that because they understand why that spreadsheet is important and how the data is going to be used, right? How the information is going to be used. Whatever the actions are that are happening on the team tend to get better, more useful. And that might be eliminating some actions that weren't producing results because they know they can do that because the system told them they could do it. Or again, improving stuff because now they can see the machinery. They go, oh, this is silly. Why are we doing this? Let's just, send more emails or whatever the actions are they're taking. But that's exactly right. It keeps it really, really simple.
No, so I love that you have a certification program for this because it's such an important skill that, in your case, you're working with agency owners. We just walked through the planning phase of this. So,
Yep.
and let's look at the next step and like kind of higher level if we're applying it to across the board for service companies.
Sure. So the next level would be kind of on the build side, right? So first, as we're planning, we have our questions, the information we're going to collect to get the answers, and we know what we're going to do if the answers are within range, lower or higher than we expect. So we have all that planned out. Now we go into build. That's where you're starting to use your tools and set up all of these different measurements. So for some people, it might be a spreadsheet that they collect all the information, and that's fine. Others might be asking questions that are better suited for something like Google Analytics 4 or Microsoft Clarity or any of these other platforms that are out there, right? Again, the tool doesn't matter. What does matter is how we're using the tool and how we're thinking about the tool during that build process. So the first key to the build step is the results. And we have to make sure that as best we can, the tool is able to tell us the various results. We call this ACT, which how many times did we ask somebody to start a journey? How many of those actually considered? In other words, what percentage actually considered? And then ultimately, what percentage transacted? Who finished it? And so we're measuring not just the finish line, which I think is what most companies do by default, how many people cross the finish line, but it's how many people started the race in the first place. And then also measuring how many made it halfway through, at least that. So that you can see, like, did we lose them in the beginning of the race? Did we lose them at the end of the race? Why, if they didn't finish, why didn't they finish? Now we can ask better questions because we're measuring for that, right? So that's the result side of things. We make sure the traffic is identified. That's little things called UTM parameters. Anybody can Google UTMs and you'll see a billion trainings on how to set those up. They're very easy. But they tag in our traffic. So as the website's getting traffic, it's able to identify, it knows where the traffic is coming from. What brand sent that traffic? Was it Google? Was it Facebook? What type of traffic was it? Was it YouTube social traffic that I'm not really paying for? Or was it Facebook paid traffic that I am putting dollars and cents behind? And then what was the purpose of the traffic? And this is the piece that people miss here. So it might be something like the way that I like to describe this. And again, I think it's like a story, which we'll get to in a second. But the idea is when the traffic comes into our site, it's identifying itself saying, hey, listen, I'm a Facebook ad. I'm the one that had a picture of a horse in it. I'm delivering somebody to the Academy Insiders page who's already looked at it a couple of times. They seem like they're ready to buy, and I gave them a reason to buy with additional testimonials. That's why I'm bringing them to the page. Please tell me how I did compared to these other ads, the one that uses the dog and the one that's giving the 20% coupon. Let me know how I did compared to these other two, right? Then right away, there's another email, an email comes in with the traffic and says, oh, I'm email number 7 of the 12-part autoresponder series. I'm just trying to get them to join the community. Please let me know how I did. And all of our traffic sources are identifying ourselves like this. What starts to happen, and this is where the story part comes in your build, which is where you just have to understand how to use the tools. And you just need training, right? So whether it's Google Analytics or Microsoft Clarity, whatever the tool is, get training, understand how to use it. But what should start happening is certain traffic sources you will find are really good at certain types of results. Some of those traffic sources are really good at the ask part of ACT, right? Where they make people aware of the thing. Some are really good at the consideration phase, getting them to consider or reconsider. Some are really good at closing the deal. And so you might find like, oh, that Google organic search traffic is really good at getting people to see the sales page, but it's horrible at getting them to convert. But that Facebook retargeting campaign that we targeted for those people to come back, it's really good at getting them to consider. And then we have the abandonment email that comes in because we make them, kind of sign up for their email to, start their membership account. And that email is actually what gets them to close the deal. So now I understand how I can start using traffic sources together. I'll use my organic search to cast a wide net, keep people aware, but I don't need them to convert. I'm not trying to just bring them in. I'm going to rely on the Facebook campaign to help them retarget and consider. And then I'm going to make sure I'm collecting emails as fast as possible. So the cart abandonment campaigns are what actually causes them to sell. That's how it should work. And now that I have this whole thing planned out of my build is I'm measuring all of that to make sure it works like that. That's how I know. Going to your point, it's like once you understand the black box is there, second question is what's inside of it, right? So then you see what's inside of it. Then you go, how do I think this is working? And you guess. You say, okay, I think it's working because everybody does 100% click-through rate on my emails. Fine, think that. Doesn't matter where you start. What matters is that you have that you start, right? Doesn't matter how, just that you start. So then you have this, that's the build, and you're measuring everything at this point. So we have our plan of what to do when we get our numbers. We have our builds, now we're collecting our numbers. Then it's the launch, using our numbers. So the way that happens, the very first key to that is the mindset shift of what we call listen, which is what you're doing is you're listening for that story of which traffic causes which results. And another way to think about this is we're listening to the conversation that's happening between the users and the website, specific to measurement of websites. So you and I are having a conversation. I'm going to change what I say based on what you say and vice versa. This is normal with humans. Digital marketers, for some reason, lose their mind and they don't realize there's still a conversation happening. It's just digital now. So there's a conversation, very real conversation happening between on the MeasureU.com site right now and users. They're probably subvocalizing it. You probably hear yourself reading the words that are in copy. There's absolutely a conversation. But real time, I can see what you're saying and I can hear your words and I can adjust accordingly. How do you do that digitally? Well, you can't if you're not listening into the conversation. So how do you listen? You get better at measurement. The better we are at measurement, the closer it's like listening into their side of the conversation. And then from how do we adjust the conversation to keep it going in the right direction? That's the marketing side. That's where we are, because we are able to listen to their side of the conversation, because we know, hey, we thought they would do this, but they're doing that. We can adjust our marketing to influence, and this goes back to the influencing of the revenue and profits. We can influence the behaviors they're making so they are more likely to show revenue and profits in the end of it, right? So if they're, as an example, if I start to see that they're landing on an offer page, but they're leaving within 10 seconds, I know it's not price I have to worry about from my offer page. I know I need to, something else above the fold causes that issue. So I already know I'm listening to the conversation going, wow, that expectation was either not set correctly or not matched correctly. And it was obvious. So now I know to go to look at my pages with that mindset because I'm looking at it from their perspective because I listened to their conversation so I can change stuff on my end. So that the next time the conversation's likely to continue, they scroll down, they interact with the messaging, whatever it is. So that's the listening step. It's a mindset shift. Once you get through the listening and you kind of go like, cool, I'm going to listen for the conversation. The next is you're comparing it to your forecast. This is something else that is sorely missing from most organizations. And I'm not talking about, oh, we're going to make $10,000 next week. What I'm talking about is a very different, much more detailed forecast. And you're going to hear a pattern here that includes results like the $10,000, but also how you got those results. So a true forecast would be something like, here, we're going to spend $10,000 next week on Facebook. I expect $1 per click. So my CPM should be roughly around X amount. I expect $1 per click. My click-through rate should be at least 1%. That should generate this many people to go to the offer page. Of those people who go to the offer page, here's what percentage should go through the cart. Here's what percentage should actually complete the cart at this average ticket, which will generate $10,000 in sales. Now I've got my forecast. All right. And of course, I've already built out my measurements. So I'm recording all these numbers somewhere. So I've got them. So now I know how the machine should be working. And now instead of asking silly questions, which I get everybody asks, but they're still silly, instead of asking what happened to all the money we spent last week, you're starting to say what's going to happen to the money I'm spending next week. And now you're driving through the windshield as opposed to looking in the rearview mirror all the time. What I used to call forensic marketing. Like, what's the point of understanding last Wednesday? It's gone. You need to understand next Wednesday. That's where action is. That's where the results are. It's in the future. So we managed to that. So you've got your forecast, and all you're doing when you're using your measurement is you're listening to the conversation, gathering the numbers and seeing them. You're comparing those to where the forecast said they should be, and you will very obviously see where you're hitting the mark and where you're not, which is that final key to that using your numbers step, which is this is where you optimize. This is where you take the actions you planned already to take based upon those numbers being good, bad, or ugly. Right. So it's like, that's how everything ties together. And what most companies do is they try to just optimize first when that is the absolute last step, technically the last thing you should do. And it's also supernatural, meaning it is extremely natural. You cannot help but now optimize because it's just a natural step to do it. But if you try to optimize first, everyone's like, what do I do? How do I do it? And everyone just guesses. Right. I think Dan Kennedy called it random acts of marketing. That's what everybody does. Or they go to masterminds and everybody professionally guesses for them, which is even worse sometimes. Right. So, but instead, if you knew your measurement, and what I love about it is it's your own market telling you, if you make these adjustments, I will adjust on my side and I'm likely to continue the conversation. So why would I not do that? I'm literally listening to them tell me how to best serve them. And that's all I do. I don't have to think about anything. I just listen and adjust. So it's easy and there's no drama in that, which is kind of cool. It's another benefit of measurement.
So I love looking at this measurement structure. You're looking at first planning it, asking the right questions, and you shared a really great framework for that, and then building it out, collecting the data, and then actually launching it, utilizing it. What is this actually telling us? And then naturally, what are we changing? How are we optimizing this? And I love looking at this is really where the rubber hits the road when you're actually delivering real services for clients and getting the results. And I look at this and I see this is kind of like the day-to-day week by week, month by month way of being able to generate results. And one of the things that you said about that was interesting around forecast. And I heard you say the forecast, and I think you're talking about it from a week by week basis. And one of the things that we look at with irresistible offer is to forecast, but I would call it something different, is like really have a vision you're stepping into to create for a longer period of time. So let's say, let's say that you have an offering for a client that you're going to help them be able to double their company over like B2B. Let's say it's I'm trying to come up with a B2B SaaS. Let's just throw that out there. So you're going to be helping a B2B SaaS company to be able to double their company over the next 18 months. And maybe that's the promise that you are generating. So that's a long-term forecast. That's a long-term vision. And now it's looking at, okay, how do we be able to work backwards to create that? And what are the success conditions we need to have in place? What are the metrics that we need to be managing to so that we can be on track for that? And then you could click in place everything that you're talking about on measuring it on a week by week basis to be able to make sure that you're on track for that big expansive result. And that's when you, and this applies to all different kinds of services. And it's so valuable because now you're no longer just another ads buyer. You're no longer an HR consulting company. You're no longer this, like we do this for this client. That's like the positioning that everyone else in your market has. Now you're moving completely out of that, and you are a results partner for B2B tech companies, for example. You are a results partner that's helping them be able to drive X amount of growth, or be able to help them increase this amount of profit. And I see this with companies that have like an engineering and a company that did engineering. They put together an engineering solution that when we broke down the numbers and we actually looked at the variables for success, they were able to add another $500,000 of net profit to the company in a matter of months, right? And then that's looking at that on an annual basis, right? And so when you can break down and understand what you're just talking about here, you understand the mechanisms to actually drive results within your service. Now you actually have the power to forecast on a much longer term perspective, and then you be a growth partner. And that's what allows you to charge, double, triple, quadruple. The engineering company I was just mentioning, they went from charging, a couple $100 an hour to $1 million offers, like $1 million per year offers.
Fantastic. Yeah.
That's what's possible when you actually know what it takes, right? So I love that you shared this format because this is the type of thinking you have to be able to deliver these kind of transformations.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. And that's the entire point, because it unlocks the value that is inside all of us, right? We don't think we're not valuable, but that's what the clients think. And our job is, how do we communicate that value? And these frameworks and systems are how we do that. It makes it very simple for them to say, and to your point, the reason they can do $1 million offers is because the market looks at them differently. They go, oh, you're this, not what I thought. You're not like all the rest of the stuff. This is new and unique. Therefore, higher value. Therefore, I'm willing to pay the money for that. It makes more sense. It's going to solve my problem.
And what was fun is that Jane, one of our clients who came on our podcast recently, she was actually sharing how she started putting in place the metrics and being part of their overall process to be sharing with their clients, like this is what we're doing right now, and having a dashboard, and that dashboard, building it out. And now you have your case study that you're building as you go, and you have stories that you can then tell if they allow you to, and it could be just part of the contract that you say, we tell the stories. We may not, like, this can be an anonymous story, but like it's part of your marketing and to show the kind of results that you can produce. And this, for her, it's allowed them to be able to 10x their lifetime client value and charge 300% more every month.
Love that. Yeah,
so
I love that. And that's another example. Simple systems. That's the trick. I think a lot of people complicate systems, right? Because they think it's a million gears, and it's not. It's like 3. And they again, complexity isn't the skill. Simplicity is. That is a skill. That's a muscle that people need to practice. And seeing the simple answers, the simple, obvious answers that are there takes time. And not a lot of people are willing to do that, because they're like, go, 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 go. And they think action equals results, but effort doesn't always equal results, right? It's efficient action, efficient effort that does.
And that's the thing about this, is that you can actually deliver 10 times the results with less billable hours. So you
Yes.
can be more
Yes.
profitable on top of being able to charge twice as much, triple as much. Like we see this across the board for our clients. These are not anomalies. This is what's possible when you actually take responsibility for actual results for clients, measure
Yeah.
it, and stand by those results. And you know that they have these things in place. These are success conditions they have in place. We know we can be able to generate this outcome as a partner.
Yep. That's
But it
exactly
gives you
right.
the
It just
criteria to
takes time.
evaluate.
Yeah, it's exactly
It
right. It just
does.
takes time. And you can buy time from the client. The client is willing to give you more time if they can see the progress, if they can see your plan, if they can see what your thinking is, right? And that's what all these strategies do. That's what all is the systems do. They allow you and the client to have a mutual place where you both understand what's going on, right? And communicate, which is
Well,
what makes it easier.
and I think that's beautiful what you just said too, is that you can do this while you're actually servicing clients. You build this as you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
And then you could take that and replicate that across your clients. And then and it might cost a little more the first time that you're doing it, but that's paid R&D.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And like I said, it goes down to starting, right? The answer isn't what's the perfect action. It's the first action is perfect.
Right.
Take action, get started, try building a system, talk to
Well,
other people. I mean, get something done, use AI, right? To at least get something out that you can use.
and I think it's a good thing to remember too, is that, well, it does take some time, but why is it worth it? Is it worth taking the time if it means that you can charge twice as much or three times as much and be the most in-demand company in your industry? Is it worth that? We did kind of tease about AI, and this is not enough time to talk about it thoroughly, but I'd like to hear, what are
It's a
some of
good
the
reason to
biggest
come
things?
back. Yes.
What are some of the best things that service companies how can they utilize AI so that instead of getting totally whooped by it, that they can
Yeah.
actually utilize it to become more profitable and efficient?
Again, I think it comes into strategy with AI, and that's where I would suggest it's not getting good at, like, you're learning how to use ChatGPT. It's not the learning of the tool that will save you. It is the strategy of how you use the tool that will save you. Always, always, always. We have an idea of the result we want, but we're probably not very clear on it. What we are more clear on is how we're going to get there. So we might see the first couple of steps pretty clearly, and then some of these other steps are kind of blurry, but we'll figure them out as we go. So we understand the how is sort of how we communicate. We focus on the how, knowing that it's going to get us in this direction, and ultimately we're going to get the result we want. But with AI also has the whole results and how model. The difference is it understands how to do everything all at once, all the time. It has access to all things. So it never needs to be told how. But it has no idea what the result is that you want. So what humans do is humans communicate with AI by default as if it was a human. And they tell the AI, I need you to act as a copywriter. You're a professional persuasion copywriter, and your job is to write a headline that's going to cause somebody to buy this product. And the customer avatars, blah, 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 blah. I don't do any of that anymore. Now what I do is I just say, go here to this sales page, or I even call it a sales page. Go to this URL and tell me what the intended result of this page is. Rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you highly are understanding what this result is, and tell me what the result is. And then it'll come back and says, oh, it looks like this is a sales page. It's trying to help somebody understand the power of the Academy Insiders. They can learn forecasting, everything else. We MeasureU. And I'm like, okay, cool. Now I need this page, and this is where I'm going to vomit out to AI. I'll say, I need this page to be highly converting. It should convert to these different avatars. I went to I explain everything. But what I'm doing is I'm telling it how to do its job, which is a mistake. So what I will do is I will take that prompt and I'll sort of exit out and I'll reprompt it. So then I go to AI and I say, please analyze the following prompt for its intended result. In other words, you tell me what I'm trying to do. Here's the prompt. And I just give everything that I just gave it. And it goes, oh, it looks like you're trying to ask me to provide this as a result, right? If you give it the how, you accidentally constrain it. You remove a lot of its power. So, and that's why it gives you AI-like results. That's why it looks like AI, because you're restraining it. Now what I want you to do is rewrite the prompt so it gets me a result better than the desired result. So now it comes out and it writes a prompt for itself, which is pure results based, which is what I want. I don't know how to communicate it. All I told it was, I know how to get to mountain one. Mountain one looks like kind of this result. What I really want, though, is mountain two, which only you can see. My goal with AI is trying to ask it to reveal to me what it knows. That's how I think about it. And so what AI does is that my job as a human then is to define the result as clearly as I can and get really, really good at doing that, which, by the way, huge management tip, also will help your team. When everybody starts understanding how to define results clear, you get better results in your company. So it's a good skill. It goes everywhere.
So you actually just really pointed at a blind spot here that I didn't see this, because when we're managing people, when we're building offers, we're always looking at the end result. And that's how we operate at Hands Off CEO. And I was asking for the result, but I wasn't asking for it in this way. And I'm now seeing a much better way of doing it. It makes so much sense what you just shared.
Yeah, and that's the subtle shift, because now you go, I will never look at it the same way, because
No.
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense anymore.
No,
Once you see it, that's exactly right. And that's the power. So when
Right.
you realize, oh, I just need to talk to results. Now I'm getting work done through AI, I'm conscious of that right now. But in a few years, that's just going to be work. Just like a computer
as you're sharing this, I see a use case for this right away. It's like, I'm creating another program right now, and I use AI a lot to be able to help build out the framework stuff. But I have a framework very specific teaching framework that I use that generates a certain kind of result. And I'm wondering if maybe I should just throw that out and just see what it'll come up without that, without telling them how to do it. So I'm going to try that now, because I'm really curious to see how that's going to work out. So thanks for that. It's a great use case for that. All right, Mercer, what have I not asked you that you would like to leave as like a final advice for listeners?
That's a good question. Whether it's AI or whether it's the measurement stuff that we talked about, or just the idea of systems in general, the phrase that we have in our organization, it's good enough to get going and then come back and make it better later. And we say that to ourselves constantly, because sometimes we can get caught up in, oh, I've got to do this, and then I've got to do this, and then I got to do this. And then you're just thinking in your head, and then you're stressed out and you haven't actually taken any action at all. And it's because, and our team will say this, somebody will stop up and say, hey, I think we're trying to make it better later, and we passed good enough to get going already. And it's like, yeah, you're right. Can we get this thing live? How do we take action on this? And then we'll come back and make it better later, because we don't even know. Why are we planning out this 13th mountain we're going to visit when we haven't even gotten in the car to go to base camp yet? If you keep taking the action, you will automatically start to learn how to do it right. That's what that experience will show you. But if you don't take the action, if you don't allow yourself to just get good enough to get going, you stay stuck. But that's a choice. And now you know it's a choice. So just hear it in yourself to go, you know what? Right, good enough to get going. I'm going to take some action. We'll see. I'll get feedback from that. Then I'll know the next natural action to take. And that's how you do it over and over again.
Oh, I love that. One of my mentors shared that anything worth doing is worth doing poorly first.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And that's something I have in my mind, but I like yours even better, good enough to get going. And I think that is like worthy of a core value. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So how can people connect with you?
So I would
any
suggest
resources you might want to share.
Yeah, MeasureU.com is a great place to get started. We talked a lot about measurements. I would suggest you start there. We also have some AI training there that we do as well, so you can learn that. But MeasureU.com is a great place. And if you go to MeasureU.com/hands-off, all one word. Again, MeasureU.com/hands-off, there's a free community that you can join. We've got a free membership that has there's a bunch of free training we give. There's a ton of resources. So if you're trying to figure out how to measure stuff or need dashboard templates, those are all available for free for the community members back there. So again, MeasureU.com/hands-off. And MeasureU is with a U at the end.
All right. Wonderful. What a great resource. Thank you so much for being generous and sharing that, Mercer, and all this amazing expertise that you've shared. If people actually start following this, getting good enough to get going, they will see a dramatic improvement in their business, what they can charge, how easy it is to generate new referrals, new clients. This is really just so critical and so important, which is why I specifically came and had Mercer on. So thanks again, Mercer, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your time here.
Thanks again for having me, Mandy.